Hollywood actor Burt Reynolds was more than simply a name. He was an icon of strong manhood and irresistible charisma to his millions of admirers around the world. He dominated the silver screen in the 1970s and 1980s, playing famous roles in films like Smokey and the Bandit, Deliverance and The Longest Yard, and was crowned box office king during that time. Despite his star power, Burt Reynolds was a multi-talented individual. He was a complex human being who struggled with deep sorrow, anguish, and paradox. From an arduous upbringing through the pinnacle of his profession to the crushing disappointments of love and money, Burt's life was a roller coaster ride. He overcame insurmountable obstacles to become famous. How could a guy of Burt Reynolds' strength and resilience weather such storms? How did he triumph over insurmountable odds to earn his admirers' eternal devotion? Burt Reynolds' biography is more than just a Hollywood biopic. It paints a complex picture of a man navigating the highs and lows, the sunshine and the dark sides of life. Come along as we explore the life of Burt Reynolds, a man who never gave up, and see how the glitter of Hollywood meets the touching stories of ordinary people and the resilience of a man who refused to give up. A member of a poor family, Burt Reynolds came into this world in Lansing, Michigan on February 11, 1936. His dad, Burton Milo Reynolds Sr., was a police chief and a veteran, and his mom, Harriet Fett, was the rock they rested on. Because of his father's job, the Reynolds family traveled around a lot, which meant that Burt had a very eventful childhood. Because of the scars caused by his insecurity, he is strong-willed and determined to prove himself. Burt started to enjoy his carefree youth in the sun when his family moved to Riviera Beach, Florida. His extraordinary athleticism made him stand out here. Having Burt as a halfback made his high school proud, and he was a football superstar. The expectation was that he would go on to become a professional athlete after earning a scholarship to Florida State University for his outstanding performance. But fate had a way of putting even the loftiest ambitions to the test. After sustaining a serious knee injury in one of his initial collegiate games, Burt was unable to continue playing sports. Another stroke of bad luck came soon after when his health was further worsened in a car accident. Burt had to face the hard reality of his ambition of being a professional football player destroyed during his long months confined to bed. But even in his lowest point, Burt found a way out. He enrolled in an acting program at Palm Beach Community College as he was still trying to figure out what to do next. At first, acting was merely a diversion and a new experience for Burt. But as soon as he took the stage, he discovered a gift he had never knew existed. Seeing Burt's extraordinary talent, Burt's theater instructor, Watson B. Duncan III, pushed him to take acting seriously. Burt won the Florida State Drama Award for his performance in Duncan's mentee play, Outward Bound, which made a lasting impression. The New York City Hyde Park Playhouse Drama Academy offered him a full scholarship in recognition of this achievement. This chance meeting transformed Burt Reynolds, a young man whose aspirations had been dashed in athletics, into an actor with promise. Burt Reynolds demonstrated that everyone can transform adversity into drive to succeed by making the difficult leap from the football field to the stage. In addition to being the stuff of legends, his humble beginnings are an inspiration for how to persevere when faced with adversity. Burt Reynolds had a lengthy road to success in the entertainment world, rising from New York's little plays and acting classes. Theatrical and film sets, which required not just skill, but also tremendous tenacity, were now confronting him after he had fantasized of playing on large sports platforms as a football player. Upon receiving a scholarship to attend the Hyde Park Playhouse Academy, Burt wasted no time establishing himself as a formidable actor. He first appeared on Broadway in Look We've Come Through and has since appeared in plays like Tea and Sympathy. Burt gained significant experience and producers took notice of the piece, even though it only played for 5 performances. Reynolds soon after started getting little TV parts. He was a guest star on Flight, Schlitz Playhouse, and M Squad. Despite the small parts he played, Burt's attractiveness and acting chops helped him land a 7-year deal with Universal Studios, a major turning point in his career. The 1959 casting of Burt as the lead in the TV series Riverboat was a watershed moment. He got his big screen break playing the role of Captain Ben Fraser. But after 20 episodes, Burt left due to conflicts with producers and co-star Darren McGavin. It became increasingly difficult for him to land gigs following this exit because of the stain it left on his record. Instead of calling it quits, Burt got back into the acting game with guest spots on hit TV series like Perry Mason, Route 66, and The Twilight Zone. He was able to refine his technique and establish himself in the eyes of audiences through these roles. Burt made his film debut in the early 1960s in films such as Armored Command, 1961, and Angel Baby, 1961. A low-budget action film that gave him experience in feature films, Operation CIA, 1965, was his real breakthrough. Navajo Joe, 1966, a spaghetti western shot in Spain, was one of Burt's western involvements at this period. Despite the film's lackluster reviews, Burt laid the groundwork for the harsh, gruff image that would come to characterize his action hero persona. The part of blacksmith Quint Asper in the hit TV series Gunsmoke was another major accomplishment for Burt Reynolds in his early career. He won over millions of American viewers with this performance, which highlighted his acting chops. Burt stayed on the show from 1962 to 1965, which he called the happiest years of my life. But after 3 years, Burt chose to step away from Gunsmoke and pursue bigger roles in movies. Despite the inherent danger, this choice allowed him to advance in his career in groundbreaking ways. Burt kept appearing in movies far into the 60s. Shark, 1969, and Sam Whiskey, 1969, were two films that, while not unsuccessful, did not achieve much acclaim. This did not deter Burt, though. He didn't give up and worked tirelessly to establish his credibility. Effortlessly overcoming barriers and proving his talent characterized the early portion of Burt Reynolds' career. He worked his way up the entertainment industry ladder, landing modest parts on Broadway, TV appearances, and low-budget films. Burt had not yet achieved superstardom, but he had set himself up for an incredible career. Burt Reynolds was prepared for the big breaks of the 1970s, when he would be one of Hollywood's biggest stars, with a dogged persistence and an unbreakable spirit. With dogged persistence, Burt Reynolds prepared to rule Hollywood in the 1970s. He finally reached the pinnacle of his career in this decade after years of underwhelming work, and his iconic performances cemented his place in American cinematic history. With its commercial success and critical acclaim, the 1972 picture Deliverance became a watershed moment. The film, which was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, solidified Burt as a leading star in Hollywood, and Burt proved that he was more than just a symbol of masculinity in his portrayal of Lewis Medlock, a man who faces the harsh challenges of both humanity and nature. Burt, though, was far from finished. With the 1977 action comedy Smokey and the Bandit, he solidified his reputation as box office king. Burt brought joy as the lovable and sly trucker Bandit, and the Pontiac Trans Am became an instant classic thanks to his legendary performance. With over $300 million in box office receipts, the film became an international phenomenon and inspired multiple sequels. Fans all around the globe were enchanted by Burt's charisma, effortless manner, and playful energy, which made him an instant staple in action comedy flicks. Even though Burt Reynolds' career was showing indications of slowing down in the 1980s, it was still a good decade for him. One of his major pictures was 1981's Cannonball Run, an ensemble comedy with a star-studded cast that made a respectable $160 million at the box office. In 1979, Burt followed his heart and founded the Burt Reynolds Dinner Theater in Florida, combining his success in film with his passion for theater. In addition to providing a platform for his performances, the theater also gave aspiring actors a chance to hone their skills. Burt showed a new side in this endeavor. He is an accomplished performer who is passionate about both promoting his own work and helping to develop the careers of young artists. But Burt's star started to wane in the 90s as his films failed to live up to their earlier popularity. Boogie Nights, 1997, was a game-changer in this regard, reintroducing Burt to the spotlight in Hollywood. Burt surprised everyone in Hollywood by playing the role of adult film producer Jack Horner. He was nominated for an Oscar and won a Golden Globe for his performance. It demonstrated Burt's adaptability and his will to challenge himself by taking on parts that called for nuance and depth of feeling. Burt Reynolds was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, and he proved it time and time again during his career. He left behind an astonishing body of work as an actor, having performed in more than 90 films and dozens of TV series. His performance in the 1991 to 1994 TV series Evening Shade earned him an Emmy, among many other honors. Burt, a guy of courage, wit, and charisma, became an idol in his own right, and not just because of the accolades he received. Burt Reynolds was a multi-talented star. In addition to his many other artistic pursuits, he had a deep love for music and did everything from directing and producing to performing on his album Ask Me What I Am. In the entertainment business, Burt took on a number of responsibilities. He was an artist who was never afraid to challenge himself, and while not every project was a smashing success, he always showed that fearlessness. His characteristic optimism and sense of humor remained intact even in the face of overwhelming adversity. Beyond the films he appeared in and the accolades he received, Burt Reynolds' legacy lives on. It is embodied in the story of a man who, despite insurmountable odds, followed his heart and did what he loved. Burt is one of Hollywood's eternal legends because his successes are proof of the power of genius, persistence, and bravery in the face of adversity. Despite the fact that Burt Reynolds was beloved by millions while he was on film, his real life was a complicated web of suffering, remorse, and tender moments. Burt was a powerful and vulnerable man, and his private life and relationships were turbulent despite his successful work. In 1977, when Burt initially crossed paths with Sally Field on the set of Smokey and the Bandit, she was a budding young actress and he was in the prime of his career. It was clear and strong from the moment they were together that they were deeply connected. Burt went on record as saying he couldn't help but be captivated by Sally because of her inherent attractiveness, intelligence, and talent. But there were wounds in their raging love. Burt, who thought he was helping Sally develop, frequently imposed his demands on her due to his dominating personality. Even going so far as to choose her roles, he did it for her, including the one in Norma Ray, for which she received her first Academy Award. But Sally felt weighed down by Burt's control, and her sense of identity began to crumble. Even though she loved them deeply, she felt stuck in a vicious cycle since their relationship brought back painful memories of her childhood. At their nadir, Burt forbade Sally from accepting her Emmy for her part in Sybil at the 1977 ceremony. Burt still felt terrible about breaking up with Sally, even though they broke up in 1982. He frequently apologized in his later years, describing it as the biggest mistake of my life. Sally was still the woman who stole my heart, and an indelible memory for him. Burt had troubled marriages in addition to his tragic love affair with Sally. In his first marriage, which lasted for less than 2 years, he wed Judy Carn, who was a star on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Irreconcilable conflicts caused their youthful love to swiftly fade after their 1963 marriage. Subsequently, Judy leveled accusations of emotional and physical violence on Burt, which he never publicly denied. Even though Burt and Judy were bitterly estranged, he still cared about Judy, particularly in her tougher years. The dynamics of Burt and Lonnie Anderson's second marriage were different, but the turmoil was just as intense. After being married in 1988, Burt and Lonnie's beautiful image and the speculations surrounding their private life were the center of attention for Hollywood media. The adoption of a son, Quentin, did not provide Burt the serenity he had hoped for, but they did it together. Burt and Lonnie's relationship quickly deteriorated as they both accused the other of infidelity and violence. Burt accused Lonnie of being aggressive and domineering, while Lonnie accused Burt of being emotionally distant and living an opulent lifestyle. Their 1994 divorce was one of the most publicized splits in Hollywood history due to the protracted court fights that ensued over child support and other financial issues. Burt loved Quentin, the boy he and Lonnie adopted, with all his heart, no matter how difficult his relationships were. Burt had a tough time making the decision to adopt Quentin. Although he wasn't emotionally prepared to become a father just yet, he felt coerced into giving in by Lonnie. Burt often felt guilty for not spending enough time with Quentin after their divorce, when he lived with his mom. Further straining their relationship was the financial pressure Burt had in his later years, which included large child support payments. Burt hoped his son Quentin knew how much he cared for him, and his affection for Quentin remained constant. Burt Reynolds' private life mirrored the profoundly moving films in which he starred, replete with passionate love, devastating loss, and perpetual regret. Burt kept a vulnerable heart, able to appreciate and value the relationships he had, even though his romantic relationships often ended in failure. From his enduring bond with Sally Field, whom he affectionately referred to as the love of my life, to the profound experiences of parenting, Burt's life was marked by both joy and tragedy, each of which contributed to his legendary status. When he was at the peak of his career, Burt Reynolds personified opulence and riches. He was a celebrity with a life that millions of others wish they could have. However, his downfall into serious financial crisis was the result of a series of bad choices, lost investments, and unbridled spending, which lied beneath the glitz and glamour. In the years between 1970 and 1980, this is the updated version of the text with the correct punctuation. Burt Reynolds was a highly compensated actor in Hollywood. During his prime, he made over $10 million a year, which was astronomical for that time. Burt, on the other hand, believed that wealth should not be hoarded, but rather enjoyed. His extravagant spending included real estate, high-end vehicles, private planes, and a stable of racehorses. A 153-acre Florida ranch, a Beverly Hills house, and a Tara estate in Georgia, which was inspired by Gone with the Wind, were all examples of his estates that served as symbols of his success and flair. Although these possessions were symbols of his majesty, they proved a financial strain as repair expenses grew exponentially. Burt, in his quest to amass even more riches, engaged in a number of risky business ventures in addition to his wild spending. Many of these endeavors, alas, proved to be disastrous financially. Among his worst decisions was putting money into the Po Folks restaurant business in the 80s. Burt lost millions of dollars when the chain collapsed, despite the fact that the idea had promise at first. Similarly, he lost tens of millions of dollars in various business ventures, one of which was a fancy restaurant called Daisy's Diner. Financial strains began to build on Burt in the late 80s and early 90s, when his film career was winding down. Alimony and other legal expenses stemming from his divorce from Lonnie Anderson put a further dent in his already tight financial situation. Burt was compelled to file for bankruptcy in 1996, with debts over $10 million. Real estate, vehicles, and personal possessions totaling $6.65 million were disclosed in his bankruptcy papers, but his obligations far exceeded these assets. To settle debts, even Burt's famous Florida ranch was put up for auction. Optimism and humor, which Burt Reynolds was known for, were unaffected by his financial setbacks. While self-deprecating, his statement represented his unyielding desire to enjoy life to the fullest despite the problems he faced. He quipped, "I've lost more money than anyone could imagine, but I have no regrets. The only thing I regret is that I didn't spend more." As he grew older, Burt discovered happiness in more modest creative endeavors and meaningful connections, even though he was no longer surrounded by opulence. For both financial management and the closure of a turbulent phase in his life, he auctioned off numerous personal possessions, including his Golden Globe trophy and performing souvenirs. When Burt passed away in 2018, his estate was only about $3 million, a pitiful sum in comparison to his illustrious past. Still, his story of perseverance and cultural impact are immense. Burt Reynolds' financial ordeal is both an inspiration and a cautionary tale about the perils of overindulgence and ill-advised investments. Not only was Burt a celebrity on screen, but he was also a legend in the hearts of his fans because he kept his wit and love for life even when things became tough. Burt Reynolds' latter years were peaceful, yet profoundly so. During this time, he took it easy, pondered the gifts life had to offer, and put the last reflective nail in the coffin of his stormy career. Burt turned his attention away from the limelight in Hollywood and onto more introspective endeavors that reflected his core beliefs and principles. During this time, Burt stepped away from the limelight and into supporting roles in films. On the other hand, his performances were markedly more moving because of his modesty. One outstanding depiction of Burt's last chapter is The Last Movie Star, 2017. Burt gave a portrayal that mirrored his own life as an elderly movie star who reflected on his past while struggling with obscurity. The film was an emotional farewell to his devoted followers who had stuck with him for all these years. Burt seemed to be saying a sincere goodbye to the world with his quiet yet very moving farewell. Burt used time outside of acting to re-establish connections with important people in his life. Quentin, his kid, had become an object of his pride and comfort, so he tried to spend time with him. A rare feeling of tranquility, which Burt had struggled to find in his high-pressure life, was something he frequently enjoyed with Quentin, he said. Burt had persistent health problems throughout this period. As a result of injuries he received throughout his career, he struggled with chronic pain for decades. One such injury was from an on-set accident he had in 1984 while filming City Heat. In spite of his deteriorating health, Burt never gave up on his love of the art. Even though he was no longer involved in big projects, he took on more intimate parts that allowed his age to shine through. In Florida, Burt Reynolds suffered a heart attack and died on September 6, 2018, at Jupiter Medical Center. An 82-year-old man he was. Fans, acquaintances, and family were startled and grieved by his death, even though it was not completely anticipated given his deteriorating health in recent years. Burt was more than just a great actor. He was an iconic figure associated with a golden age of Hollywood. Burt Reynolds' impact goes far beyond the movies he was in. His tenacity and determination served as an example to all who came after him. His coworkers often remarked that he was an incredibly sentimental person who made everyone around him laugh and feel inspired. The artistic community and his legion of fans were devastated by his death. On the other hand, it taught us that life isn't flawless, but that the imperfections, the wounds, are what truly define our worth. Regardless of setbacks or regrets, Burt's journey exemplifies living life to the fullest and making a lasting impression. Burt Reynolds' legacy was shaped not just by his acting roles, but also by the way he lived and loved with an unquenchable fire in his heart. Burt Reynolds' life is an inspiration because it exemplifies the power of determination, perseverance, and the value of learning from one's mistakes. It is also the narrative of a legendary film star. Daring to take chances, challenge himself, and face failure head-on, he lived a life that was imperfect but important. It was precisely Burt's flaws that endear him to audiences and helped him become an icon, both in Hollywood and beyond. Is that so? When you think about Burt Reynolds, what comes to mind first? Was it a memorable part, a story that moved you, or something that brought a grin to your face? Let us know what you think by leaving a comment. If you enjoyed this and would want to see more stories about legendary figures, please subscribe and give it a like. Your time here is really appreciated, and we will see you in our future film. So long.